Oh, and yes, our very own Rand Paul, stuck in his time warp of the 1800s, likes the results of getting people like Maduro out of office, as Trump did, but he has a problem with the process. Penny for your thoughts, Rand. I haven't seen you win a political chess game yet in the Senate. When are you going to start playing to win? When are you going to start representing the people of Kentucky who voted for Trump by over 30%? There is no political reality to your nuanced objections, which always fail, full of criticism but lacking any ideas as to how to fix the things that you complain about. Well, welcome back, folks, to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. And welcome back to another training session on how to fight the civil war that we are in and to which most are clueless. You've heard me say many times that the political process in this country, and in fact the world for that matter, is a chess game. You play the game in real time and in reality. And what I mean by reality is, you are constantly having to adjust the strategy as the game goes along, because you can never predict with any certainty the moves that your opponent is going to make. Folks, life is not static. It's ever-changing. We don't fight war today like we did 100 years ago. And you don't play the world chess game the same like some of our Republicans do. Reflect back on how during our Revolutionary War, the British had a stodgy, suicidal approach to lining up all their men in an open field, marching toward one another with their bayonets attached. It was almost like a game at a carnival show where you were just shooting at ducks. Thousands and thousands of men were lost as they marched into that meat grinder, which made no sense because some idiot back in England was more interested in appearances and what he selectively considered was how a gentleman should fight a war. But of course, he was never in danger, so why should he care? There is only one way to fight a war. You kill the enemy any way you can and as fast as you can. You don't play around with it. We're in a chess game whether you like it or not, and you're going to have to play it whether you like it or not. This is life. This is reality. As my mentor told me one time, he said, Jack, the definition of peace is when your enemy is dead. It kind of caught me by surprise, but I got to thinking about it, and he's right. Think about it the next time you see the leftist psychos burning down your cities and accosting ICE to keep them from arresting criminals. It's time you start defining the enemy in your mind and knowing who they are and protecting yourselves. They are most likely the ones you have been toxically tolerating for the last few decades. So now this takes me to an antiquated group still living in the 17 and 1800s, caught up in yet another utopianistic idea of total freedom from any governance. Historically, when you look at the Libertarians and the elections in which they have engaged, they are always wrong, but never in doubt. Historically, they deliver themselves into the hands of those they supposedly hate the most, but they take the rest of us with them. Here's an example. Back in 2019, Kentucky had a Republican governor, of which we have only had 2 or 3 in the last 50 years. And he was doing a great job, but taking on some pretty tough issues, particularly the communist teachers' unions. Well, the Libertarians in Kentucky got their pants twisted up over some decisions of Governor Bevin, the Republican, and decided that they were going to run a Libertarian candidate for governor. That Libertarian candidate won 26,000 votes, which would normally have basically been Republican votes, or Republican voters. However, a Republican governor lost to a Nancy Pelosi radical leftist, and that's Andy Beshear, who is now wanting to be the next U.S. president. Here's the shocker. Beshear only beat the Republican governor by 5,500 votes. After the Republicans were defeated, the Libertarian leader reportedly said, "Oh, how sweet are the tears of Republicans," as if he was so happy and gleeful to have punished Republicans and to teach them a lesson. But that same idiot and those who followed him placed us into the hands of a radical leftist, and Kentucky is a red state. So now that takes me to a topic that has increasingly given me heartburn, and that is because Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky seems to have become one of these libertarians, always finding an excuse to oppose President Trump. He rarely has only but a handful of other Republicans on his side, and usually he's just solo. That speaks volumes as to what a bad salesman he is, as well as how bad his ideas are. Now, the reason this causes me so much heartburn is because I was one of Rand's earliest supporters and have carried a ton of water for him in the past. But the way that he is playing this chess game and giving aid and comfort to the enemy has caused us to part ways. I find it very difficult to be supportive of him. The most recent example is with regard to President Trump taking out Maduro of Venezuela. I don't really want to repeat how bad of a guy Maduro is. You've heard of all the reports and how many hundreds of thousands of Americans have died as a result of him. But Rand always finds a way to be glad of the results that Trump obtains, but always gives the enemy a bone and has issues as to how the game was fought or how it was won. Rand is simply like the old English, happy to die with honor rather than no matter how ugly the win might be. No, I'd rather win ugly than have to fight with honor and bury hundreds of thousands of my countrymen. Recently, Rand said he's glad that Maduro is gone. No thanks to him. But he followed up his famous qualifiers by saying, we don't use force when we think elections have not gone our way. Rand, please ditch the sanctimony and stop giving those who will spend hundreds of millions in your next campaign to defeat you. And they just might win given how you are alienating your base. Remember, your state voted for Trump by over 30 points. Come on, Rand. Have you ever known a communist to have or hold an election where the outcome was not already predetermined? It really is insulting to me personally that you would try to foist that kind of logical fallacy upon your constituents. You're acting like some of our Supreme Court justices of old who treated our Constitution as if it were a suicide pact. I'm also tired of getting a lecture from you as to your libertarian ideology that is as utopianistic and psychotic, meaning detached from reality, as is communism. The only thing that libertarian idealism has ever delivered is defeat for everything that they have claimed to support and brought a lot of defeat to Republicans. Right now, Kentucky has two libertarian problems in the form of Representative Thomas Massie of the 4th Congressional District, who delights in opposing Trump, even though his district voted for Trump by nearly 67%. And then the runner-up to Massie is Senator Paul, who I never, ever dreamed I would find myself opposing until he started helping the Democrat left more than he is the Republicans. So to my friend Rand, I suggest you take some lessons in political chess and ditch this fantasy of a libertarian world. Okay, now let's move on to another topic. Well, as with the demons, evil has to have a home, and in today's America, it found one. The Democrat Party left. Look at their platform, folks, and everything they say. The Democrat platform is everything God hates, and if you like and find appealing those things that God hates, then you have a false expectation of any salvation or eternity with Him. As I have done in my recent podcast calling out Democrat leaders by name and showing you pictures of them as well as quoting them, I'm proving to you that it is impossible for them to speak the truth as it was with the demon-possessed people in Christ's time. Don't be fooled. Just look at all the chaos in Minnesota. One wonders how a Scandinavian, German, Hessian heritage type people could have become so captivated by the evil of the Democrat left. Well, it's a longer story than I have time here to build out, but suffice it to say that it goes back to a time under Chancellor Wilhelm who began the process of instilling into the attitudes of people a sense of entitlement. And they did it with not only health care, but they also did it through their education system, public education. And why? Were they just that kind of compassionate leaders? No, they weren't. Here's what was really behind it, and this is historical. These leaders loved their power so much, and they wanted to perpetuate it, and in order to maintain it, they had to control the people, and what better way than through public education and healthcare? Well, fast forward to today, and the so-called and misnomered Minnesota nice crowd have become the Minnesota morons, and like the three wise monkeys, they see nothing, hear nothing, nor say nothing. They impede ICE from arresting child rapists, kidnappers, and traffickers. Can you imagine that? People wanting to block law enforcement from capturing criminals and getting them off the streets? That's how psychotic these people are up in Minnesota. This was a perfect incubator for evil, and it thrived. In come the Democrats from around the country, promising the naive everything and delivering them nothing. Yet the Minnesotans kept digging the grave deeper and deeper. Now we see these Scandinavian descendants protesting the rounding up of murderers and child rapists and drug traffickers embedded in the illegal immigrant population they allowed in, whose purpose was to allow it, that is the Democrat Party, to grow and grow bigger and deeper and have more voters in order for them to maintain perpetual power in Minnesota. And then to make matters worse, the Democrat establishment there imported hundreds of thousands of Somalians with an average IQ of well under 80. And as has now been proven, they were trading money for votes. And that's how American taxpayers were defrauded between $9 and $19 billion. Now you may ask, how in the world can that degree of fraud be allowed to happen? Well, first of all, you institute a neo-confederatism. That rejects our federal immigration laws, better known as sanctuary. You know, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. And of course, our Supreme Court is too slow and ineffective to declare it and all sanctuary cities and states unconstitutional. How simple is that? And after all these decades, they still have not declared it such? The next step in Minnesota was to respond to any claim of fraud by telling the people that you were going to investigate any allegations of fraud. Then you send in a team of people to investigate, but they're not there to find anything, but to bury anything that is indicting. And that's exactly what they did. And that's exactly what Governor Walz did. And under the black racist socialist attorney general in Minnesota, Keith Ellison, they buried the crimes. So there you have it, folks. It's pretty simple, which doesn't speak well of the people of Minnesota nor anywhere else in America. This is how the Democrat Party has been allowed to thrive and stay in power. It's fraud. It's the laundering of money. It's the shuffling around of money to them to keep them alive and their bad ideas alive. But then, not so surprisingly, Minnesota is as spiritually cold and dead as their deepest, darkest winters are. They are nearly a majority atheistic area, part of our country, as is the Northeast and as is the West Coast. And what did they do to a church service up there just last week? They broke in and stopped the service, frightening the children and screaming and threatening at them, saying, your parents are Nazis and you're going to hell. We just cannot allow our churches and our church services to be interrupted like this. And that is, in fact, a felony and against the law. And I am glad that our Attorney General Pam Bondi is now arresting these folks and indicting them. But now I want to go to another topic here, and as reported in the news lately, and particularly in Breitbart News, a Democrat scored a rare win in one of our Texas's reddest legislative seats on Saturday, capturing a state Senate district that Donald Trump carried by double digits. You have heard me repeatedly rail against conservatives, Christians, and Republicans' unforgivable laziness. I have consistently labeled them as the real true problem in the country today, and yes, even responsible for much of the evil because they simply did nothing. In the recent special election in Texas, Republicans struggled to turn out their voters in a low participation special election. The Democrat victory could be short-lived with the seat going back in the November general election, but nevertheless, there is simply no excuse for any Republican to fail to vote in any election. And as I've said before, I don't care if it's an election for a dog catcher. You have no excuse for not showing up and casting your vote when there's an election. Absolutely no excuse. And I'm currently hosting an effort to unseat that sanctimonious libertarian who always votes against Trump, this narcissist representative from Kentucky's 4th District, that is Thomas Massie, who has to be replaced. And we have just the right candidate, former Navy SEAL Team 6 Ed Gowin, who has earned Trump's trust and endorsed him, but whose numbers are also really great and is an effective fundraiser. But trying to get people to show up to a fundraiser and to an event to help replace Massie with a real true patriot is a struggle as well. And it seems to be that way in so many races across the country. It's just that the good guys just never seem to muster up the intestinal fortitude to do what's right. You need to really look into your souls and find out what's really going on there. For all my listeners in Kentucky, and particularly Kentucky's 4th District, you need to be engaged in the Ed Gowin campaign in Kentucky's 4th District, where 67% of the people in that district voted for Trump. Yet Thomas Massie is almost always a never-Trumper vote. It is an easy sell in the 4th once the people in the 4th District find out and learn how disloyal Massie has been. And when they're told, they immediately switch on the spot. Folks, please listen up. I don't care if you're getting this message out in Texas or Wyoming or anywhere in Kentucky. The things that Thomas Massie has been doing against the president affects you as well as so many people across this country. Remember, all elections now, the old saying used to be all elections are local. No, all elections now are nationwide, and they count, and you have to be engaged. No matter what state you're in, no matter what district you're in, you need to get engaged, and whether you can vote for them or not, it doesn't matter, at least to make a contribution. It's very important that you do. And you can positively affect the direction of the country in a positive way by simply realizing that in today's world, all elections, like I just said, count, and they are not just local. It affects you everywhere. Kentucky's 4th affects the people in Wyoming and Montana. Moving on to another training session for detecting liars, let's do a quick rundown of the Democratic liars of the day. First of all, we have Jamie Raskin of Maryland's 8th District, who has never lived a day in the light of truth, much less spoken it. And remember, I follow these people closely, and I watch and listen to what they say. I've got a long history on all these people. He just said that almost nothing has been released of the Epstein files. The truth is 3 million documents have been released by the FBI. So who's going to hold him accountable for that? Not the media, but you could. What Raskin doesn't like is there is nothing there about Trump. So he resorts to lies to create a scenario that there is something there to protect Trump. But then we have no media that will challenge Raskin with the truth, and there is never any accountability for the left. Then we have that old Senator Schumer. Now, after saying back in May that shutdowns should never be used, he shuts down the government again. The second time in just a handful of months. Because the Dems are demanding the end of ICE rounding up alien criminals. Imagine what our forefathers would do to these leftist liberal Democrats that harbor and protect criminals from apprehension and deportation. Have you ever known a criminal to not be a Democrat supporter? Better yet, have you ever known a Democrat that didn't support criminals or our enemies abroad? Now we have Governor Tim Walz trying to escape prosecution himself with distractions using terms as murderers and Gestapos to describe ICE. These Democrats are speaking to their constituency. By the way, have you heard any media outlet ask them to prove their accusations? I'm sure you have now heard that most Democrats feel that churches are legitimate targets for riots and protests, even though against the Constitution and the law. You see, I've been telling Christians for years that they are coming for you. Don't wait till they are at your door. Start voting out these leftist liberal Democrats now. And it's time for the churches to stop turning their congregations into socialist. Get rid of these pastors who do that. Now, how about the mentally warped Senator Gallego of New Mexico saying that ICE is going after all the brown people? People, make him prove it. Make the media ask him that question. Make the media force him to prove just what he said there. But who is challenging him on that? He needs to be humiliated with that statement and shunned out of office. No one ever confronts these liars and shows them up, so their accusation goes unanswered, and the simple-minded gobble it up. And the pity is, they vote. Oh, and yes, our very own Rand Paul, stuck in his time warp of the 1800s, likes the results of getting people like Maduro out of office, as Trump did, but he has a problem with the process. Penny for your thoughts, Rand. I haven't seen you win a political chess game yet in the Senate. When are you going to start playing to win? When are you going to start representing the people of Kentucky who voted for Trump by over 30%? There is no political reality to your nuanced objections, which always fail. Full of criticism, but lacking any ideas as to how to fix the things that you complain about. Okay, one last thing. The Super Bowl. Well, we have the national anthem, but that's not good enough for the woke, who will follow that with the black national anthem. Get that. Our national anthem's not good enough, so now they're going to have the black national anthem. There is nothing unifying about the black anthem and nothing national. It is exclusionary. No one alive today is responsible for slavery, which ended 160 years ago. It is designed to be divisive, and the woke feel themselves so righteous. Think about it this way. Let's say that two of your siblings had a bad fight years ago and claimed to have put it behind them. However, one of them every Thanksgiving wants to bring it up at the dinner table and remind everyone how Brother Joey treated Charles, but it's supposedly now over? That's not reconciliation. That's not forgiveness. That's not putting things behind you. That's not unity. This is the simmering resentment, hatred, and intentional divisiveness, particularly of the left and what they're doing with the black national anthem. Just think that if every Thanksgiving you had to remember and relive the past on that one example that I just gave you, that is what the left and the woke and the resentful psychopaths do and are doing. And the woke members of the executive committees for the NFL want to have the black anthem for a wrong done so very long ago. Should I remind everyone that there were black slave owners? Should I remind everyone that it was blacks that sold blacks into slavery for money? Should I remind everyone that there were more white slaves in North Africa than African slaves in the U.S.? See, it doesn't serve their selfish and evil purposes for the truth to be exposed. As Christ said, he who will not forgive will not be forgiven. So if we are going to have a national anthem, a black national anthem, how about one for the Japanese for the internment camps? Or the Chinese for building the Transcontinental Railroad? Or the Native American Trail of Tears? We don't define a nation by its worst moments, folks. These people that keep this wound raw and alive are demonic, evil, and facing a judgment they will have richly earned. Now the question is, Mr. America, Mr. Non-Woke, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to capitulate or stand your ground? Well, folks, that will do it for today. Again, check out our website at bluegrasschronicles.com for other content and materials. And until next time, I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.